For thousands of years, people have looked up at the moon and dreamed of visiting it. Now we know that it's not the closest destination in the solar system. It's not easy to get to. It's a long voyage. It would take 4 days to fly there aboard Apollo 11, the first spacecraft to reach the moon. But for all that trouble, it still managed to captivate our imaginations. We've made entire religions around it. We've written epic poems about it, and we've traveled back to it again and again. But as familiar as we are with the moon, as much time as we've spent gazing at it, the truth is we're still getting to know our rocky companion. And if you think you know everything about it, stick around. You might be surprised at what you don't. The moon is not what you think. We've all heard some of these before, but they're worth repeating. The moon is slowly drifting away from us. In about 50 billion years, the two bodies will be so far apart that the moon will no longer be able to stabilize Earth's axial tilt and will experience wild climate swings as a result. We also know that the moon is tidally locked to us, which means we always see the same side. This happens because the gravitational forces between the Earth and the moon pull them into a synchronized rotation, where the orbital and rotational periods are the same. Thanks to this synchronous rotation, tidal bulges form on the Earth's surface twice a year, causing high tide. These bulges eventually become misaligned with the moon, which causes the tides to rise even higher, causing storm surges and flooding, especially where the ocean floor rises closer to the moon. The misalignment also slows down Earth's rotation, which makes our days about 70 minutes longer every 100 million years. The strange thing is the moon isn't the only body that's tidally locked to us. There are also several small asteroids that have been captured by Earth's gravity and are also tidally locked, including 2020 CD3. Some sources say it's actually a hunk of ice that broke off of a larger asteroid that was passing by. Either way, it's still tidally locked to us, and it orbits within the moon's orbit. So when it comes to the moon, there's plenty that we do know. But there's also plenty that scientists aren't sure about, starting with how the moon formed in the first place. We tend to go back to the same origin story over and over again, and it's called the giant impact hypothesis. Basically, it says that about 4.5 billion years ago, a planet roughly the size of Mars called Theia collided with Earth. This sent tons of debris into the sky, which coalesced into a disk around the planet. Eventually, the material settled down and hardened, forming the moon. But lately, scientists have begun to question whether Theia even existed. They've cited a number of physical and chemical similarities between the two bodies, which suggests that they could have formed from the same primordial cloud of gas and dust. As for why the moon is so darn close to us, well, that's another story. But that doesn't explain why the moon always looks the same. That's because the moon is literally glued to our gravitational field. Well, actually, it's more like a gentle embrace than a super strong bond. Gravity is never far from your face, but it's still not a permanent relationship. If the Earth had formed without the moon, it would have spun on its axis very quickly, completing a rotation in less than 10 hours. The moon's gravity gradually slowed it down, and now it takes 27 days for the Earth to rotate once while the moon orbits around it once in the same amount of time. And since then, the two have been stuck in a celestial tango. But it gets weirder. When Apollo 12 reached the moon in 1969, they left a seismometer behind to record any vibrations on the lunar surface. Months later, they analyzed the data and found that when they struck the moon with a hammer, it rang like a bell. According to NASA, this suggested that the interior of the moon could be hollow or at least have a cavity beneath the surface. In fact, other astronauts reported hearing ringing sounds whenever they hit the surface with a tool. This led to the so-called hollow moon theory, which claims that the moon is nothing more than an empty shell that's several miles thick and 6,000 miles in circumference. There are a lot of problems with this theory, but that hasn't stopped believers from latching onto it. In fact, there are people who claim the US government knew the moon was hollow before launching Apollo 11, and that the moon landings were fake. However, later analysis revealed that the strange sounds were probably caused by reverberations within the mass-concentrated areas known as mass. And now we come to the biggest anomaly of all, the moon's perfect size. If the moon were slightly bigger, its gravity would destabilize the Earth's tilt, throwing our climate into chaos. If it was smaller, there wouldn't be enough gravity to stabilize our planet. The odds of such a perfect balance are astronomical, unless someone fine-tuned it to be exactly this size. And this has led some people to conclude that the moon must be an artificial satellite placed there by an ancient alien civilization. But here's the thing. We can confirm that the moon formed naturally. Its composition, atmosphere, and geological history prove it. Besides, if aliens really did build the moon, why didn't they put it further away from us? As it is, we're reaching the end of the cosmic dance. In about 5 billion years, the sun will expand into a red giant and engulf both planets, which means any evidence of our rocky companion will be erased from existence. So if you want to learn more about the moon, you better hurry. If the Zulu legend is to be believed, we might be running out of time. In their mythology, the moon was originally a beautiful woman who became pregnant by the sun god. Her jealous husband transformed her into the moon and banished her to the night sky. There she wandered the heavens for eternity, forever separated from her lover. Maybe she's not an alien satellite after all, but a heartbroken lover whose tears fell to earth and created the tides. In reality, we know that ancient cultures across the globe kept careful track of the phases of the moon and used them to develop calendars. The Babylonians used the phases to divide the year into months, and each month was named after a goddess of the moon. And the Maya built enormous temples aligned with the path of the moon, but none of them seemed to suspect that it was a gigantic space station masquerading as a natural satellite. Okay, maybe they were onto something. After all, the moon's gravity doesn't match its mass. It should be stronger than it is, which has led some people to conclude that there's some kind of force inside the moon keeping it aloft. It's even been suggested that the moon's core is surrounded by antimatter that's emitting an unknown force that keeps it up. Or perhaps it's powered by a fusion reactor. Unfortunately, these conspiracies aren't any more plausible than the idea that the moon landings were fake. But there is still a lot to discover. The far side of the moon is completely different. Its surface is covered with vast, dark gray plains called Maria or Mare, which is Latin for seas. It's thought that these were formed by massive volcanic eruptions that occurred early in the moon's history. The crust is also riddled with strange magnetic anomalies that suggest there's a lot more going on beneath the surface. And now we come to the final frontier. What's inside the moon? Some believe it's hollow, while others think it's solid. A few even speculate that it's inhabited by extraterrestrial life. Scientists, however, believe that the moon has a solid inner core surrounded by a liquid outer core, a mantle and a crust. But we won't know for sure until we drill deeper into the moon, which is harder than it sounds. For starters, the moon doesn't have an atmosphere, so there's no air to blast away during the drilling process. Secondly, it's covered in regolith, a layer of loose, dusty material that's extremely abrasive and can damage equipment. Finally, the moon is bombarded with cosmic radiation, which can mess with sensitive electronics. But we're making progress. China plans to send robotic probes to the lunar surface that will drill 100 meters deep to search for water ice. Meanwhile, NASA's Artemis program aims to land humans on the moon by 2024 and establish a permanent base there by 2028. The agency is even considering mining the moon for helium. 3. An element that could be used as fuel in future nuclear fusion reactors. If the moon really is a giant space station, maybe we'll find the control room where they're generating clean energy for the whole solar system. What do you think the moon is? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more videos like this.